Yeah, picture this. Imagine the streets of Secunderabad, Hyderabad. It's the evening of August 1st, 2025. But it wasn't, the usual city noise, the hustle and bustle. Instead, there was this extraordinary quiet. This wasn't your typical protest with shouting and signs. No, this was a silent march. It started, very precisely, at 6:30 p.m. from St. Francis School, a really solemn procession moving past St. Mary's School down St. John's Road and ending up at the Mother Teresa Statue. Think about hundreds of people, each holding a candle, just walking. The only real sound was their footsteps, echoing this collective demand for justice. It was quite something to witness, apparently. So quiet. In this really profound, peaceful demonstration, it was a direct response, an urgent one. Just a few days before, on July 26, 2025, two Catholic nuns, Sisters Preeti Mary and Vandana Francis, they had been arrested over in Chhattisgarh. Controversially arrested. Okay, so let's unpack this whole thing. In this deep dive, we're going to really pull back the curtain on this story as it was unfolding then. We'll explore the specific incident, the arrest itself that sparked this really powerful movement.
And then we'll zoom out a bit, look at the broader context, the laws involved, the political dynamics swirling around it all. Our mission today is for you to walk away not just, informed, but with a really solid grasp of what was actually at stake here for everyone involved.
Absolutely. And it's quite compelling, isn't it? How just one single event can shine such a bright light on these bigger, intricate things like legal frameworks and, well, societal tensions simmering underneath. We're going to help you connect those dots. Look beyond just what happened to really understand why it mattered so much then and, frankly, why it still matters. And what kind of critical questions it brings up about how laws get interpreted, how they're applied on the ground, and importantly, how communities react and respond in these moments of crisis.
Right, so let's rewind a bit, back to July 26, 2025. Durg Railway Station, Chhattisgarh. This is where it all went down for Sisters Preeti Mary and Vandana Francis. They're both members of the Assisi Sisters of Mary Immaculate, ASMI for short. They found themselves in a situation that was, well, completely unforeseen and pretty dramatic, really. They were just accompanying three young tribal women aged about 18, 19. And these young women were reportedly traveling to Agra to find work for employment opportunities. On the face of it, it sounds pretty straightforward, helping young women from vulnerable communities find jobs.
Seems like a normal act of assistance, right?
Exactly. But things escalated. Yeah. Very quickly. Members of the Bajrang Dal, a Hindu nationalist group quite known for their activism against religious conversions, they approached the nuns, and they almost immediately accused the sisters of human trafficking. They cited Section 143 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, the BNS, which deals with trafficking involving coercion or deception. And not just that, they also threw in accusations of unlawful religious conversion under Section 4 of the Chhattisgarh Religious Freedom Act, which dates back to 1968.
Wow. So a double whammy, legally speaking. Trafficking and illegal conversion charges. That's incredibly serious.
Incredibly serious. But here's where it gets really interesting. Almost immediately, there's this direct contradiction. The families of those three young women, they came out swinging, adamantly denying the claims. They stated quite clearly, unequivocally, that their daughters were traveling willingly for jobs with their full consent, and they had all their ID and everything.
Okay, so the alleged victims' families are saying, no, this wasn't trafficking, this was consensual travel for work.
Precisely. Which creates this huge discrepancy, right? You've got this formal accusation of trafficking, but the very families involved are telling a completely different story. It really makes you wonder about the basis of the charges, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. That immediate contradiction goes right to the heart of it. It fundamentally challenges how those laws were being interpreted and applied in that moment. When the families present such a starkly different narrative, it just highlights this massive disconnect between the official charges and the reality described by those closest to the situation. And remember, as of August 1st, 2025, the day of that silent march we started with, those nuns were still in custody. Their bail application hit jurisdictional hurdles. It got directed to the NIA court in Bilaspur under the NIA Act.
The NIA Act. Isn't that usually for, terrorism-related cases?
Often, yes. It's typically invoked for very serious offenses. Applying it here adds a significant layer of complexity and, frankly, seriousness to their legal battle. It usually means tougher bail conditions, longer proceedings. It definitely raised eyebrows.
Okay, wow. So that really amps up the stakes. And that brings us right back to August 1st, 2025, and that response in Hyderabad. This is when the city's Christian community stepped up. A truly remarkable show of solidarity. And this powerful, peaceful call for justice. The silence was key. A very deliberate choice, aiming for this dignified atmosphere. It signaled their conviction, but without any confrontation.
A powerful strategy.
Absolutely. And the logistics, the message, It was all very precise, very intentional, organized mainly by the Syro Malabar youth movement, SYM Hyderabad. But it had broad support from lots of other Christian groups across the city. The route itself felt symbolic, didn't it? Starting at St. Francis School, moving past St. Mary's, St. John's Road, ending at the Mother Teresa Statue. Icons of service and faith, and the instructions were crystal clear. Absolute silence. Follow directions. Maintain a prayerful, dignified feel throughout. Just imagine it again, that collective voice, not shouting, but expressed through this unwavering, quiet, purposeful movement. It really speaks volumes about their unity, their faith. Father Manu Joseph, who's the director of SYM Hyderabad, he put it really well. He said, and I'm quoting here, "We believe peaceful and prayerful witness is vital to uphold justice and unity. This march is an expression of our collective voice in faith and fraternity."
That sums it up beautifully. And, this kind of peaceful demonstration, it offers such a striking contrast to what we often think of as a public protest, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it carries this incredibly potent message: unity, conviction, steadfastness. It really underscores that advocacy, that protest can take so many forms. And sometimes, silence can be the most powerful, the most articulate way to make a point. When a community chooses that kind of dignified silence, it demands a different kind of listening, doesn't it? It often highlights the moral weight, the deep sincerity of their cause more than sheer volume ever could. It's about restraint amplifying the message.
That's a great point. And to really grasp the full gravity here, the context behind those accusations, it's important to understand who these sisters are, what their congregation, ASMI, actually does.
Right, their background matters.
Definitely. So the Assisi Sisters of Mary Immaculate, ASMI, they were founded way back in 1949 in Kerala by Monsignor Joseph K.W. Thomas. They're rooted in the Franciscan tradition, which emphasizes, humble service, compassion, and their mission. It's deeply committed to serving the sick, the needy, the poor, those who are rejected. They have a long, specific history working with leprosy patients, for instance. Their work is broad medical care, education, social ministries, all aimed at lifting up the most vulnerable. And critically, they have a very active presence right there in Chhattisgarh, specifically working to help tribal communities.
So they're not outsiders just passing through. They have roots and a history of service in that very region.
Exactly. Which makes accusations of trafficking members of those same communities seem, well, it stands in really stark contrast to their entire mission, their whole history of service.
Yeah, that background information isn't just like color commentary. It's absolutely crucial for understanding the whole picture. That established history of humanitarian work, especially within those specific tribal communities, it adds this layer of, irony and certainly complexity to the charges. It really forces you to ask, how does this happen? How can this kind of long-standing service suddenly become grounds for such serious allegations? It does suggest maybe that there are broader underlying tensions at play here, perhaps pre-existing suspicions or ideological conflicts that go way beyond the immediate facts of this one incident at the station.
Okay, so given all that the arrests, the family's denial, the nuns' background, let's look closer at the actual laws they were charged under. Because these laws are central, not just here, but in similar cases across India sometimes.
Right, let's break them down.
First up, the Chhattisgarh Religious Freedom Act of 1968. It's an older law, inherited when the state was formed from Madhya Pradesh. It basically prohibits religious conversion by force, by allurement like offering benefits or by fraud. It's not new, but it was amended back in 2006 to bring in much stricter penalties. That reflects a broader trend, maybe, towards tightening controls around conversion. And the nuns were specifically charged under Section 4 of this act. Then you have Section 143 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, the BNS, that's the human trafficking one, and specifically it focuses on cases involving coercion or deception. And again, it's worth repeating, the families of the young women, the supposed victims, strongly denied any coercion or deception at all. They insisted it was willing travel for work.
And this really brings us to a critical point about how these laws work in practice. Anti-conversion laws, like the one in Chhattisgarh, they've faced a lot of criticism from human rights groups, both in India and internationally. The main arguments are that the wording is often quite broad, making them potentially easy to misuse, particularly against religious minorities. And critics also argue they can clash with fundamental rights, like Article 25 of the Indian Constitution, which guarantees freedom of religion, the right to profess, practice, and even propagate one's faith.
And Chhattisgarh isn't alone in having laws like this, right?
Not at all. Similar laws exist in several other states, Odisha, Gujarat, Uttarakhand, among others, and their application has often been controversial, frequently criticized for disproportionately targeting Christian and sometimes Muslim communities involved in education, healthcare, or social work. So the real heart of the controversy often isn't just the existence of these laws on the books. It's acutely about their implementation. Especially as in this case, when the facts presented by the alleged victims' own families seem to directly contradict the very basis of the allegations, it really raises the specter of these laws being used or perhaps weaponized for other purposes.
Yeah, that's a crucial distinction. And this whole incident, it definitely didn't stay local, did it? It sent ripples across the country, sparked a pretty significant national outcry, highlighting these much broader tensions we're talking about.
It really blew up, relatively speaking.
It did. Look at the political reactions, especially coming out of Kerala, since that's the Nuns' home state. You had the chief minister, Pinarayi Vijayan, and also Rahul Gandhi, both publicly condemning the arrests. They basically called it persecution. We saw United Democratic Front MPs actively protesting about it in Parliament. And what was really telling, I thought, was that even some BJP leaders in Kerala felt they had to kind of distance themselves from the controversy. That's not typical, right? It signals the kind of political heat and public feeling, particularly in a state like Kerala with a large Christian population. Makes it tricky even for allied parties to defend the actions without potentially alienating voters.
That political dimension is always fascinating, how local incidents play out on the national stage, especially when religious minorities are involved.
Exactly. And then there was this other development around August 1st, reports that the Union Home Minister, Amit Shah, had apparently directed officials to reapproach the trial court about the nuns' bail. Now, on one hand, that high-level intervention might suggest, maybe some relief was coming. But on the other hand, the fact remained that bail was still pending for these two sisters on the very day of that silent march, which just highlights the ongoing legal complexities, even with political attention.
Right. And if we zoom out even further, connect this to the bigger picture, this incident does seem to align with a concerning pattern observed in India over recent years. I mean, you have organizations like Open Doors USA, for instance, which monitor the persecution of Christians worldwide. They've ranked India as one of the most difficult, even dangerous countries for Christians. They cite rising religiously motivated hostility, discrimination, sometimes violence. So this specific event in Chhattisgarh, it's not happening in a vacuum. It points towards these larger ongoing debates about religious freedom, about the protection of minority rights within India. It's really not just an isolated case. It feels more like a thread in a much larger complex tapestry of discussions and real-world tensions around the rights and safety of religious minorities in India's incredibly diverse society.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, what we've really uncovered here is a story that was back then, on August 1st, 2025, very much still in motion. It touches on these really critical issues of justice, law, and freedom. For Sisters Preeti Mary and Vandana Francis, their situation remained unresolved at that point, and the Christian community, in Hyderabad and beyond, was continuing its peaceful, prayerful call for justice, hoping for a resolution that was both swift and fair, and one that really upheld fundamental rights.
Yeah, and it's quite insightful, isn't it, how a single event like that silent march can become such a powerful symbol, a symbol of unity, of faith in action. It draws crucial attention, national attention sometimes, to the complexities of justice, to how laws are interpreted, maybe even misused, and it fuels that ongoing, absolutely vital conversation we need to have about religious freedom and protecting the rights of all citizens within a diverse society like India's. This situation really throws those challenges into sharp relief.
It really does. This whole deep dive, it certainly gives us a lot to think about, doesn't it? About how intentions can be perceived or maybe misperceived, how laws get written versus how they actually get applied on the ground. And fundamentally, what does it really mean to uphold justice and foster unity in a society that's as incredibly rich and diverse as India? What parts of this story, what questions stand out most clearly to you? It's definitely a narrative that sparks some important reflection.